Welcome to LovelystoryLandfolktales. We are so glad to have you here with us. If you're new to our channel, please subscribe, like, and share our content. Your support means the world to us. Thank you, and enjoy the story.
My name is Bola, a 23-year-old final year student at Cambridge University. I'm the eldest of 3, with 2 younger brothers. Growing up, I never felt beautiful, no one noticed me, and no one wanted me. Desperation led me to make a choice I now regret deeply. If only I had known better, I would have done things differently. This is my story. A tale of desperation, regret, and the desire for beauty at any cost. Bola was a tall and slim young woman, standing at about 5 feet 8 inches. Her dark skin had a smooth, almost velvety texture that many admired, but Bola never saw the beauty others spoke of. Her big, bright eyes were one of her most striking features, framed by long lashes. They sparkled with intelligence and curiosity, but more often than not, they were clouded with doubt and insecurity. Bola had full lips that curved naturally into a lovely smile, though that smile rarely appeared. She kept her hair in neat braids, which she often pulled back into a simple bun, thinking it made her look less noticeable. Even though many people thought Bola was pretty, she didn't believe them. When she looked at herself, all she saw were flaws. She thought her body was too slim and straight, lacking the curves that her friends had. She would stand in front of the mirror, pulling at her clothes and wishing she could look different. If only I had a fuller figure, maybe I'd look better in these clothes, she would think to herself, frowning at her reflection. She often wore clothes that were a size too big, hoping to hide her body, and avoided mirrors as much as she could. Bola's lack of confidence affected the way she carried herself. She would walk with her head down, her shoulders hunched, trying to blend into the background. She felt that if she could just stay out of sight, she wouldn't have to deal with the feeling that she wasn't good enough. Despite being kind, smart, and thoughtful, Bola's low self-esteem made her believe that she didn't deserve the attention or admiration of others. Her best friends, Mary and Ada, were a constant reminder of what Bola thought she lacked. Mary was the life of the party, a bubbly and outgoing girl with a curvy figure and long, wavy hair that seemed to have a life of its own. Mary's skin was a warm caramel color, smooth and glowing, and her laughter could fill a room. She was always full of energy, and she loved to talk, often drawing people in with her lively personality. Ada was quieter and more reserved, with a grace that made her stand out even in silence. She had an athletic build, with toned arms and legs that showed her love for sports. Ada's skin was light and flawless, and she kept her short, curly hair neatly styled. She had a natural beauty that didn't need much to shine through. While Ada wasn't as outgoing as Mary, she had a calm presence that made people feel comfortable around her. The 3 girls had been friends since childhood, their bond growing stronger as they shared life's ups and downs. They did everything together, studying, shopping, and even vacationing during school breaks. Their mothers were best friends too, and they often joked that the girls were more like sisters than friends. Mary and Ada had boyfriends, and they loved talking about their relationships and sharing stories about their dates and the sweet things their boyfriends did. Bola would listen quietly, smiling along, but inside, it hurt. She felt left out, like she didn't belong in their world of romance and love. Bola's secret crush on Akin made everything harder. Akin was in the same course as Bola at the university. He was tall, with a strong, muscular build that hinted at regular workouts. His smooth brown skin and short, neat hair made him look sharp and put together. Akin was known for being one of the smartest students in their class, always getting top grades. He was quiet and focused, often spending hours in the library, buried in his books. Bola admired his intelligence and dedication, and she found herself drawn to him in a way that made her heart race whenever they were together. Sometimes they would study together, sitting across from each other in the library, their heads bent over textbooks. Bola cherished these moments, even though they rarely spoke much beyond discussing their studies. She dreamed of Akin noticing her, of him seeing her as more than just a study partner. But Akin never gave any sign that he saw her that way. He was always polite and kind, but his attention never lingered on her the way Bola wished it would. One day, Bola walked into the library and saw Akin laughing and talking with Mary. They were standing close, Akin's eyes bright with interest as Mary spoke animatedly, her hands gesturing wildly. Bola's heart sank at the sight. She felt a sharp pang of jealousy and insecurity. Of course, he likes Mary, she thought, feeling tears prickling at the back of her eyes. She's beautiful, confident, and fun. Why would he ever notice someone like me? From that moment, Bola's insecurities grew even stronger. She started to believe that no guy would ever be interested in her, not when there were girls like Mary and Ada around. She began to distance herself from her friends, pulling back from their conversations and spending more time alone. Mary and Ada didn't notice at first, too caught up in their own lives, but Bola felt the distance growing every day. Bola's mother, Mrs. Ade, was a warm and loving woman in her late 40s. She had the same smooth, dark skin as Bola, with a few strands of grey in her hair that she wore in a simple twist. Mrs. Ade was a bit shorter than Bola, with a round, soft figure that made her look huggable. She had a kind face, gentle eyes, and a voice that was always calm and reassuring. She often told Bola how beautiful she was, but Bola found it hard to believe her mother's words. One evening, Bola was sitting in her room, staring at herself in the mirror. She had just come back from seeing Akin and Mary together again, and her heart felt heavy with sadness. Mrs. Ade knocked on the door and came in, noticing the troubled look on Bola's face. "Bola, what's wrong?" her mother asked, sitting down beside her on the bed. Bola hesitated, not wanting to burden her mother with her feelings. But the pain was too much to hold in. "I don't feel good about myself, Mom," Bola admitted, her voice trembling. "I feel like I'm not pretty enough, not good enough. I want to be different." Mrs. Ade noticed that Bola had become very quiet lately. Bola was spending more time alone, avoiding her friends, and her mother could sense that something was wrong. She sat down beside Bola and gently placed her hand on her daughter's shoulder. "My dear, you are beautiful just the way you are. Beauty isn't just about how you look. It's also about your kindness, your intelligence, and your strength. Those are the things that truly matter." Bola nodded, but deep down, she still had doubts. "But, Mom, everyone notices Mary and Ada. No one looks at me like they look at them." Mrs. Ade sighed softly, brushing a strand of hair from Bola's face. "Bola, you are special in your way. You have a unique beauty, and the right people will see that. Don't compare yourself to others. You have so much to give, and the right person will appreciate you for who you truly are." Bola sat on her bed, staring at the floor. A heavy sadness filled her heart, one that had been growing for a long time. She was unsure of herself, doubting her beauty, her worth, and her place in the world. Every time she looked in the mirror, it seemed to mock her. Instead of seeing a beautiful young woman, she only saw flaws and imperfections, as if the mirror was showing her everything she didn't like about herself. Her mother spoke again, her voice soft and full of love. "My dear daughter, I can see that something is bothering you. You've been so quiet, and it hurts me to see you like this. You know, when I was younger, I felt the same way." Bola looked up at her mother, surprised. Her mother was always so strong and confident, it was hard to imagine her feeling insecure. "Really, Mama?" Bola asked quietly. "Yes, my child," her mother replied with a gentle nod. "There was a time when I didn't feel confident, when I didn't think I was beautiful or worthy. But your grandmother, my mother, taught me something very important. She taught me to believe in myself and to love myself just as I am. Mrs. Ade smiled as she remembered her mother's wise words. Your grandmother used to say, how you dress and carry yourself is how others will treat you. So, you must first believe in yourself, my daughter. Love yourself and know that you are worthy of love and respect. Bola listened closely, feeling a bit lighter. Her mother's words felt like a gentle hug, comforting her in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. Bola, her mother continued, your grandmother taught me to say kind words to myself every day. She would take me to the mirror and make me say these words out loud while looking at my reflection. She knew how powerful our words can be, especially when we say them to ourselves. Mrs. Ade stood up, took Bola's hand, and led her to the mirror she had been avoiding. Now, my dear, I want you to do the same. Look at yourself in the mirror, place your hand on your chest, and say these words after me, I am beautiful. I am bold. I am courageous. I am brave. And I can achieve whatever I put my mind to. Bola hesitated, but seeing the love and encouragement in her mother's eyes, she did as she was told. She looked into the mirror, placed her hand on her chest, and started repeating the words after her mother. As Bola spoke, she felt a warmth spreading through her body, giving her a new strength she didn't know she had. The heavy sadness began to lift, and for the first time in weeks, a small, genuine smile appeared on her lips. Seeing the change in her daughter's face, Mrs. Ade smiled and wrapped her arms around Bola in a warm, loving embrace. Thank you, Mama, Bola said softly, her voice full of gratitude. I love you even more, my dear, her mother whispered, holding her close. Before I met your father, I felt just as down as you do now. I had doubts and fears, just like you. But when I met your father, I realized that everyone has someone special, someone meant for them. The right person will come into your life at the right time, and you must believe that you are worthy of that love. Bola looked up at her mother, her eyes shining with a new understanding. You felt like this before, Mama? She asked, wanting to know more. Yes, my child, her mother replied with a nod. There were times when I didn't think I was good enough or pretty enough. But I learned that true beauty comes from within. It's not about what others see on the outside, but how you feel about yourself on the inside. That's what truly matters. Bola hugged her mother tightly, feeling a deep sense of love and connection. She was so glad they had this conversation. The worries that had been weighing her down didn't feel as heavy anymore. With her mother's words in her heart, Bola knew she could start to believe in herself again. As she lay in bed that night, Bola repeated the words her mother had taught her. I am beautiful. I am bold. I am courageous. I am brave. And I can achieve whatever I put my mind to. She knew it would take time, but with her mother's guidance and the love she felt, Bola believed she could find the confidence and self-love she had been missing. As she drifted off to sleep, she felt a peace she hadn't felt in a long time, knowing that she wasn't alone in her journey. But despite her mother's comforting words, Bola couldn't shake the feeling of inadequacy completely. As soon as she left her room, the sadness would creep back in. She loved her mother dearly but wondered if her words were just meant to make her feel better. The mirror still showed her things she wished she could change, and each day, Bola felt more trapped in her insecurities, unsure of how to find her way out. Even her mother's advice didn't make her feel better for a long time. Her mother had told her to say kind words to herself every day, words like, I am beautiful and I am enough. I am brave. At first, Bola tried to follow her mother's advice. She would stand in front of the mirror, saying those words, hoping that they would make her feel better. But as time went on, she didn't feel any different. She didn't see any changes in how she looked or how she felt inside. After a while, Bola got tired of saying those words. She stopped standing in front of the mirror and stopped telling herself that she was beautiful. She felt like it was pointless to keep saying those things if nothing was going to change. Without seeing any quick results, she lost hope that her mother's advice could help her. Instead of feeling better, she felt more and more lost, as if nothing she did could make her feel happy or confident. As the days turned into weeks, Bola's dissatisfaction with her appearance only grew stronger. Her thoughts became more consumed with how different her life would be if she looked more like her friends, Mary or Ada. The constant comparisons left her feeling isolated and deeply unhappy. Each time she saw her friends with their boyfriends, Bola's heart ached with longing. She convinced herself that if she were more beautiful, she too would have a boyfriend, and everything in her life would fall into place. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a soft glow in her room, Bola sat alone, lost in her thoughts. Her reflection in the small mirror on her dresser seemed to mock her, highlighting all the things she wished she could change. "If only I could change how I look," she whispered to herself, her voice tinged with desperation, "maybe I would finally be happy." The idea began to take root in her mind. She started to believe that changing her appearance was the key to a better life. Bola imagined herself with the curves she longed for, her confidence soaring as people began to notice her. She felt that if she could look more like the girls she admired, she would be transformed into someone worthy of love and attention. That night, a risky idea entered Bola's mind: surgery. She had heard about people enhancing their bodies through surgery, making themselves look more attractive. Bola thought this could be the solution to all her problems. "I'll save up my money," she decided, her determination growing stronger with each passing moment. "Once I have enough, I'll get surgery to make myself more beautiful. Then, everything will change for me." After finishing university, Bola got a job at a bank, where she was diligent and hardworking. But in her heart, she was focused on only one thing: saving money for the surgery. She kept her plans a secret, not even telling her best friends, Mary and Ada, or her mom. Bola wanted to surprise everyone with her new look, imagining the moment when they would all see her and marvel at the change. She believed that once she had the surgery, her life would finally improve. For a whole year, Bola lived frugally, saving every naira she could. She avoided unnecessary expenses, skipping outings with friends and even cutting back on small luxuries. Every time she added to her savings, she felt a surge of hope. Finally, when she had enough money, Bola began searching for a clinic. She found a place that offered the surgery at a lower cost than others, and though the doctor was new and inexperienced, Bola didn't care. She was eager to get the surgery done as soon as possible so she could start living the life she had always dreamed of. The day of the surgery arrived, and Bola felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She had taken a leave of absence from work, telling her colleagues that she needed some time to rest. But in truth, Bola had made a decision that she had kept secret from everyone, even her closest friends. She had been saving up for this moment for a long time, and now it was finally here. As she stood in front of her mirror that morning, Bola looked at her reflection with a sense of hope that she hadn't felt in years. Her hands trembled slightly as she ran them over her face and body, imagining how different she would look once the surgery was done. "This is it," she whispered to herself, her voice filled with both excitement and fear. "Once I change how I look, I'll attract the best guys. I won't settle for less." For the first time in what felt like forever, Bola smiled at her reflection. She imagined herself walking into a room, turning heads, and finally being noticed. She imagined Akin, the young man she had admired for so long, looking at her with new eyes. The thought filled her with a sense of anticipation that made her heart race. Bola had chosen to keep the surgery a secret. She didn't want anyone to know what she was about to do. In her mind, this was something she needed to do for herself, and she didn't want any doubts or criticisms to cloud her decision. She planned to reveal her new look only after she had fully healed, hoping to surprise everyone, especially Akina crush. She was convinced that this surgery was the key to unlocking a new chapter in her life, one where she would finally feel beautiful and confident. At the clinic, Bola was greeted by the staff, who guided her through the preparations. She changed into a hospital gown and was led to the operating room. The room was cold and sterile, filled with bright lights and unfamiliar instruments. Bola's heart pounded in her chest as she lay down on the operating table, but she reminded herself why she was doing this. "I'll be beautiful," she thought. "I'll be happy." The surgeon, a man she had met only a few times before, reassured her that everything would go smoothly. "You'll be just fine," he said, his voice calm and professional. "In a few weeks, you'll see the results you've been dreaming of." Bola nodded, though her nerves were still high. She closed her eyes as the anesthesia was administered, and soon everything went black. When Bola woke up, she was back in her hospital room. The surgery was over, and she felt groggy and disoriented. Her body ached, but there was a strange sense of relief that washed over her. "It's done," she thought. "I finally done it." She could feel bandages wrapped around the areas where the surgery had been performed, and though she was too weak to move much, she felt a flicker of hope. The doctor visited her later that day, checking on her condition and explaining the post-surgery care she needed to follow. "You need to rest for a few weeks," he told her. "Make sure to eat well, take your medications, and avoid any strenuous activities. Healing takes time, but soon, you'll see the difference." Bola nodded, trying to absorb everything he was saying. She was still drowsy from the anesthesia, but she held on to his words. She imagined herself emerging from this recovery period transformed, ready to face the world with a new confidence. Over the next few days, Bola followed the doctor's instructions carefully. She stayed in bed, taking her medications and eating the foods that were recommended to help her heal. The first few days were difficult. She felt weak and tired, and the pain from the surgery was more intense than she had expected. But each time she felt discouraged, she reminded herself of the end goal. "This is temporary," she would think. "Soon, I'll be beautiful, and everything will change." As the weeks unfolded, Bola's hope grew stronger. The pain began to subside, and she started to feel a bit more like herself. She imagined the moment when she would finally be able to look in the mirror and see the new version of herself, the version she had always dreamed of. She looked forward to showing off her new look to her friends and kin, believing that they would all be amazed by the transformation. Suddenly weeks passed. Bola began to notice that something wasn't quite right. The areas of her body where the surgery had been performed didn't seem to be healing as they should. Instead of the smooth, flawless results she had expected, she noticed that the skin around the surgery site was becoming swollen and tender. At first, she told herself that it was just part of the healing process. "It'll get better," she reassured herself. "I just need to give it more time." But as more time passed, the swelling only got worse. The skin began to change color, turning red and inflamed, and Bola started to feel a deep, throbbing pain worse than it had been earlier. The area around the surgery site felt hot to the touch, and she knew that something was seriously wrong. Panic began to set in. Bola didn't know what to do. She had followed all the doctor's instructions, so why wasn't she getting better? Why was her body reacting this way? She tried to stay calm, but the pain and the fear were overwhelming. She didn't want to believe that something could be seriously wrong, but deep down, she knew that this wasn't normal. One night, as she lay in bed, Bola noticed a foul smell coming from the surgery site. It was a smell that made her stomach turn, and she knew that she couldn't ignore it any longer. She needed help. The next morning, she called the clinic, explaining her symptoms to the nurse on the phone. The nurse sounded concerned and told Bola to come in for a checkup as soon as possible. At the clinic, the doctor looked at Bola carefully. His face became more serious with each minute. "This isn't good," he said, sounding worried. "But don't worry, it will be okay," he added, trying to make her feel better. "We need to start treatment right away." Bola felt a strong fear take over her. How did this happen? She had done everything she was told to do. The doctor gave her some medicine and told her to come back for more checkups. Bola left the clinic feeling scared and unsure. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. She was supposed to be getting better, not having more problems. Despite the medication, Bola's condition didn't improve. The swelling spread and the pain became unbearable all over her body. She could no longer move around easily, and even sitting up in bed was a struggle. The wounds around the surgery site became deeper, and the smell grew worse. Bola felt trapped in her own body, a body that no longer felt like hers. Her dreams of a better life, of being beautiful and confident, began to crumble. She could no longer imagine herself showing off a new look to anyone. Instead, all she could think about was the pain, the fear, and the regret. She had spent all her savings on a surgery that was supposed to change her life for the better, but now it felt like her life was falling apart. Days turned into weeks, and Bola's condition continued to deteriorate. She couldn't go to work, unable to face her colleagues or anyone else. She stayed in bed, isolated and alone, too ashamed to reach out to her friends. The thought of seeing a kin, or anyone for that matter, filled her with dread. How could she explain what had happened? How could she show them the damage that had been done to her body? Bola's world grew smaller and smaller as she withdrew from everyone around her. The hope that had once filled her heart was replaced by despair. She had made a terrible mistake, and now she was paying the price. The life she had dreamed of seemed further away than ever, and she didn't know how she would ever find her way back. But the swelling didn't go down. Instead, the pain and smell increased daily. These wounds were deep and oozing, making it difficult for Bola to sit or move comfortably. As the days passed, the pain grew worse, until it became unbearable. Bola could no longer ignore what was happening to her body. Desperate and terrified, Bola decided to visit another hospital to find out what was wrong. She was barely able to stand the pain as she made her way to the hospital, hoping against hope for some good news. But when she saw the doctor and explained what had happened, her worst fears were confirmed. The doctor's expression was grave as he examined her. After a thorough check, he looked at Bola with a deep sigh. "Bola," he began, his voice soft but serious, "I'm afraid I have some very bad news. The hospital where you had your surgery is not a legitimate place. It's what we call a quack hospital. The people who operated on you were not real doctors. They weren't qualified to perform any surgery, let alone something as serious as this." Bola felt as though the ground had been pulled out from under her. Her heart raced as the doctor continued. "The surgery was done improperly, and now you're facing the consequences. Your condition is very serious, and you will need extensive treatment to recover. But I must be honest with you, it's going to be a long and painful process, and there's no guarantee that you will fully heal." Bola's world crumbled before her eyes. She had spent all her savings on a surgery that had ruined her life. The dreams she had of a better future, of finally being noticed and loved, now seemed impossible. She couldn't believe she had trusted the wrong people, made such a terrible mistake, and now she was paying the price. In a final, desperate attempt to find some kind of justice or closure, Bola decided to return to the first hospital to confront the doctor who had performed the surgery. But when she arrived, she found the building empty. The hospital had been shut down, and the doctor had disappeared. Through tears, Bola learned that the hospital had been closed a few weeks earlier after another patient had suffered a similar fate. Devastated and filled with regret, Bola returned home, feeling completely defeated. She blamed herself for not being confident in who she was and for allowing her insecurities to lead her down such a dangerous path. She wished she had accepted herself from the beginning instead of trying to change her body. Now, she couldn't walk, couldn't find a job, and felt like she had no hope of finding happiness or love. Bola's days were filled with pain and despair. She cried every day, overwhelmed by the shame and regret that consumed her. The life she once had, filled with promise and potential, was now in ruins. Yet, as she lay in bed, struggling with her physical and emotional pain, Bola had no idea that her story was far from over. Despite the darkness that surrounded her, a glimmer of hope remained, hidden somewhere deep within her heart, waiting to be discovered. Bola's life had become a never-ending nightmare. Every day, she woke up to the painful reality of what her life had become after the failed surgery. The once vibrant young woman was now trapped in a body she no longer recognized. The swelling, the infections, and the unbearable smell made her feel as though she was living in a horror story. The wounds on her body were a constant reminder of the mistake she had made, and the pain was not just physical, it was deep within her soul. She could no longer leave her bed, let alone go to work or see her friends. The bright future she had once dreamed of seemed distant and unreachable, like a star that had fallen from the sky. Bola was filled with shame and regret, and she had shut herself off from the world. She felt too embarrassed to face anyone, and the loneliness only made her misery worse. Mary and Ada, her closest friends, had stopped visiting. They had their own lives to live, and Bola had pushed them away, not wanting them to see her in such a terrible state. She had stopped answering their calls and messages, and soon, they gave up trying to reach her. Bola was completely alone, and she believed that no one cared about her anymore. The pain in her heart was as intense as the physical pain she was enduring. One afternoon, as Bola lay in bed staring blankly at the ceiling, she heard a knock on her door. At first, she thought she was imagining it. No one had visited her in so long that she couldn't believe someone would be there now. But then she heard the knock again, louder this time. A wave of anxiety washed over her. Who could it be, she wondered, her mind racing. Why would anyone want to see me now? Reluctantly, Bola called out for the visitor to come in. She wasn't sure if she was ready to face anyone, but curiosity got the best of her. The door slowly creaked open, and to her shock, Akin walked in, holding a bouquet and smiling warmly. Bola's breath caught in her throat. Akin, the same man she had secretly admired for so long, was standing in her room, looking at her with kindness in his eyes. Bola's heart raced with a mix of emotions, surprise, joy, and deep embarrassment. She hadn't seen Akin since before the surgery, and now she felt so ashamed of how she looked. Her once elegant body was now marred with scars and wounds, and she didn't want Akin to see her like this. But Akin seemed completely unfazed by her appearance. He walked over to her, his presence coming, and handed her the flowers with a gentle smile. "I'm so sorry, Bola," Akin began, his voice full of sincerity. "I've wanted to talk to you for a long time, but I was waiting for the right moment. I know I've been distant, but that wasn't because I didn't care about you. The truth is, I've always loved you. I love everything about you, from your intelligence to your kindness, and yes, your beauty too. But I was so focused on my studies that I didn't want to be distracted. I kept my feelings to myself, but now I'm ready to tell you how much you mean to me." Bola's eyes filled with tears. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. All this time, she had thought that Akin didn't notice her because she wasn't beautiful enough. She had gone through so much pain trying to change herself, only to find out that Akin had loved her just the way she was. The realization hit her like a wave, and she couldn't hold back her emotions any longer. "What have I done to myself?" Bola cried, her voice trembling. "If only I had known how you felt, Akin. If only I had been confident in who I was, I wouldn't have made such a terrible mistake. I've ruined my life trying to be someone I'm not, and now I've lost everything. Akin took her hand gently and held it closely. Bola, it's not too late, he said softly. I don't care about what's happened. I love you for who you are, not for how you look. We can still have a beautiful life together. I want to be with you, to support you, and to help you heal. Will you marry me, Bola? Will you let me be by your side, no matter what? Bola looked at Akin through her tears, her heart overwhelmed with emotion. She had spent so long feeling unloved and unworthy, and now here was the man she had always dreamed of, offering her a chance at happiness despite everything that had happened. For the first time in a long while, Bola felt a flicker of hope. She realized that true beauty wasn't about how she looked on the outside, but about the love and kindness she carried within her. She remembered her mother's conversation with her. As she nodded through her tears, Bola knew that her journey wasn't over. The road to healing would be long and difficult, but with Akin's love and support, she believed she could find peace and acceptance within herself. The scars of her past were deep, but they didn't have to define her future. With Akin by her side, Bola was ready to start a new chapter in her life, one filled with hope, love, and the courage to be herself.